Arsenal just won the Premier League for the first time in 22 years. And somehow, that's not even the biggest story at the Emirates this summer. Mikel Arteta wants a £100 million playmaker that Aston Villa don't want to sell. Julian Alvarez slipped through their fingers before the deal even really started. Arsenal have already had a bid rejected for a Newcastle midfielder. And a 16-year-old winger from a relegated club might be the smartest signing nobody's talking about. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what Arsenal are building this summer, and whether the champions are about to get even scarier, or whether they're about to waste the best position they've been in for 2 decades. This is Emirates Edge. Let's get into it. Let's start with Morgan Rogers, because this is the deal that tells you everything about how Arsenal are thinking right now. Rogers is 23. He plays for Aston Villa, and last season he was arguably the best attacking midfielder outside the traditional top 6. Direct, two-footed, comfortable through the middle or drifting left, the kind of player who turns a good attack into an unstoppable one. And Arteta is reportedly obsessed with him, not just interested, obsessed. Personally driving the move, personally selling him on the project. Here's the number. Aston Villa want £100 million. Some reports put it closer to £130 million by the time you factor in add-ons. That's not a small ask for a player who, a year ago, most fans outside the Midlands barely knew. But here's the thing, Villa don't have to sell. Rogers is contracted until 2031. Unai Emery loves him. He's the beating heart of that team. So this isn't a case of Arsenal waiting for a release clause to trigger. This is a full-blown negotiation against a club with zero financial pressure to say yes. But, and this is the part that should worry Chelsea and Manchester City, who are also in this race, Rogers reportedly wants it. The player likes the pitch. He likes the idea of walking into a Premier League winning Champions League final side and making it better. That's the open loop. Does Arsenal's project win out over Villa's refusal to sell? Because if it does, this might be the signing that pushes Arsenal from brilliant to frightening. Now, before Rogers became the priority, there was another name on that list, Julian Alvarez. And this one's basically already over before it started. Atletico Madrid's release clause sits at an almost comedic €500 million, but the real fight was never really about Arsenal anyway. Barcelona reportedly pushed offers into the 120 to 150 million euros range. Real Madrid matched that energy, and Alvarez himself is said to want Barcelona specifically. Arsenal were credibly linked, briefly, in that same financial bracket. But when a player has already picked his club in his head, no amount of Emirates Stadium charm changes that. So Arsenal moved on. Fast. Which tells you something about this recruitment team under Andrea Berta. They're not sentimental. They chase value, and when value disappears, they pivot. That pivot explains why Arsenal also went in on Bruno Guimarães. A bid worth around £45 million was reportedly knocked back by Newcastle almost immediately. No surprise, given what we've heard about Newcastle's midfield plans this summer. And there's also been contact over Bournemouth's Alex Scott, only for Bournemouth to send back a pretty blunt message. They don't need the money, and they'd rather tie Scott down to a new deal, possibly with a release clause for later. Translation? Not this summer. So here's Arsenal's midfield situation in one sentence. Multiple targets, multiple knockbacks, and one genuine priority in Morgan Rogers that could take the entire window to resolve. Let's talk defence, because this is actually where Arsenal have already done business. Piero Hincapié's move from Bayer Leverkusen has been made permanent, somewhere around £34.5 million, after the Ecuadorian became a first-team fixture last season, filling in at left-back and even pushing into midfield when Arteta needed it. That deal is done, it's confirmed, and it's arguably Arsenal's smartest piece of business so far, cheap, proven and versatile, but it creates a genuinely interesting knock-on effect. Miles Lewis-Skelly, the academy graduate who filled that same left-back gap before Hincapié arrived, now has a decision hanging over him. Does he shift permanently into central midfield, where he started the Champions League final? Or does the exit talk that surfaced back in January turn into something real? Nothing's confirmed either way, but it's exactly the kind of squad depth puzzle that champions have to solve, and also exactly the kind that can quietly go wrong if it's mismanaged. Now here's a name that could end up being the value pick of the entire window: Jeremy Monga. 16 years old, currently at Leicester, and already the third youngest player to ever appear in the Premier League. Leicester are down in League One now after relegation, which means there's almost no incentive left for them to hold on to him. Arsenal are reportedly in direct talks. Real Madrid, Manchester City and Chelsea have all been credited with interest too. But a relegated selling club, plus a released under-pressure teenager, is exactly the kind of situation smart recruitment departments jump on early. If Arsenal get this one done quietly this summer, don't be surprised if it looks like a steal in 2 years. And then there's the attack reshuffle nobody's fully talking about yet. With Rodgers as the priority, left-sided addition, that puts Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard's futures under real pressure. Both have been linked with exits if, and it's still an if, Rodgers comes in. Arsenal reportedly also have background interest in PSG's Bradley Barcola as an alternative option if the Rodgers deal drags, which tells you Arteta has a very specific profile in mind for that left side. And he's not just going to settle for what's available. Here's the bigger picture. Arsenal are coming off a Premier League title and a Champions League final, lost on penalties agonisingly to PSG. That's not a rebuild. That's a team 1 or 2 signings away from being genuinely dominant for years. And that's exactly why this summer matters more than it looks on the surface. Get Rodgers, solve the midfield after the Guimarães knockback, land Monga quietly, and manage the Martinelli, Trossard, Lewis, Skelly situations without drama. And Arsenal don't just defend the title, they become the team everyone else in Europe is building their summer around beating. But miss on Rodgers after all this pursuit, get outbid or outlasted by Chelsea or City, and suddenly the champions look like they stood still while everyone else moved. That's the fork in the road. Not will Arsenal survive like some clubs we could mention, but will Arsenal actually push on? So that's where things stand. A £100 million plus fight for Morgan Rodgers that could define the whole window. An Alvarez chase that's already over. A cut-price teenager who might be the best value signing nobody notices until it's too late. And a champion squad with just enough loose threads to make this summer genuinely tense. Is Rodgers worth £100 million for Arsenal? Should they have pushed harder for Alvarez? And is Monga the smartest name on this entire list? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. See you in the next one.